Hey, I'm the Preacher's Enthusiast, and this is the Untitled, Unfinished podcast. Today with me is a friend of mine I've known for, like 6 years now, I think?
At least? No, I mean, it has to be, well, maybe 7 years, back
Around
at,
7 years. This is my
Dale's
friend,
Cards days, man.
yeah, this is my friend Justin. Justin is a fan of music. He is a former chef, right?
That's true. That is true.
And he, overall, just a good guy. So I figured, why not put him on this little show I got? Today's
Uh,
topics, we're going to discuss our thoughts on Joji. Rise to fame from YouTube obscurity to YouTube musician with
yeah.
his new music video, Run. We're going to talk about some of Justin's favorite artists. And we also have with us this from the pudding.com, the largest vocabulary in hip hop chart that they made with, I believe, Genius lyrics. And we wanted to discuss that and our thoughts on it. So, yeah. If you want to introduce yourself,
Mhm.
Justin, about yourself, anything you want to say out there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, just like Anthony said, I was a chef for 8 years. So growing up kind of in the working field, a lot of music, everything kind of comes down to what kind of music do you listen to and if you're going to be accepted or not. So growing up, I listened to a lot of rock music, growing up with Seether, Slipknot, System of a Down, some of those kind of different 2000s classics. But when I started working in a kitchen, rap music became such a big deal. And actually, a chef friend of mine who I've known for a long time got me into a lot of different kinds of artists. So, with that being said, I mean, I've been listening to so many different kinds of genres of music, actually, just because of my culinary field input. So, I mean, that's why I can say I can appreciate music just because I listen to so many different kinds of artists. So,
I think that's pretty interesting, too, that, you don't expect to learn about I guess music from being from a career that's not based in music. You know.
oh yeah, completely. So in the biggest thing is it's the drive. If we want to get a little economical about culinary, cooks don't make a lot of money. So when you look at a lot of say artists, underground artists, which we'll talk about more about later, a lot of it talk about we make enough money as a community to buy a six pack, buy an ounce of weed, buy all these kind of different things with a little bit of money, barely paying our bills to enjoy ourselves. And that's a lot of music that we can relate to, especially being in the service industry in general.
Yeah, it is a that's an interesting dichotomy because I
Oh
would
yeah.
I mean I would never say, oh, you're a chef, you must like all this music. It's kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of I mean, from restaurants I've been to, it sounds like they just put on whatever's on the radio.
Right, which
Like
you would think so, but look at Action Bronson, I believe his name is.
Action Bronson.
He was Action Bronson. Thank you. I don't listen a lot to him, but some of the stuff that I have listened to, really good stuff. But he was a chef, and he still cooks, actually.
Yeah,
But that was his biggest thing.
he has he had a cooking show or has a cooking show. I think on Vice. Could be wrong. I think it was on Vice.
Yeah, he had a couple of things going on Vice, so
And yeah,
really interesting.
he's an interesting guy. Kind of left
Oh
his
yeah.
left his passion for another passion, and now he does them at the same time. For the most
Yeah,
part,
and it's funny because there's so many different cooks that's what they do. They write bars, they write hooks, they go to these individual super underground shows just to try to produce a small following. I used to do it a lot myself, actually. I don't know, probably about 3-4 years ago. I mean, to the point where I went to a small open mics here and there in
oh really?
in the city that I live in. Yeah,
Hmm.
to where it was very much so like the 8 Mile, movie about with Eminem,
Yeah.
where we would show up at different parks and different parking garages, and somebody would bring, a boombox, or they would have a nice stereo system. And what we do, we would literally freestyle and rap battle, completely in the underground, just like the movie 8 Mile, which is funny to me, to grow up from that. But you have no idea how many of those guys are cooks, how many of those guys are dishwashers, and they're 20, 30, 40 years old, making barely above minimum wage. But you know what? They live by the underground sound, the underground music of, yeah, this is what we do. This is who we are. We're not out to make $1 million. We just want to be heard.
Yeah. Oops. But, it's probably loud. Something fell. But I was talking to my friend Taylor on the previous episode, Kanashi, and he was talking about how he's always listened to music as a form of expression of himself, and then when he started making his own music, he was telling me how it's a crazy way to like express yourself in a way you've never done it before.
Oh yeah, I mean, most definitely. I think that can go true to any industry or any feeling that you have. Is it really is a form of expression. And you can look at it when you talk about different artists that are very obscure, like Suicide Boys, very obscure, very intense music. However, it really does set the tone for what the music is behind the bars and the hooks, as opposed to just the beat and where we're coming from. Like where we look at Tyler the Creator, where he's very much so, you can tell the style or the theme of the song by the beat and by how the tempo of every beat per minute.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm not gonna. That's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. Just go on and on about that.
Oh
But,
yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about our first topic, which is Joji, who we are both
Yes,
fans of.
Joji. Yes, I actually really enjoyed Joji, especially in the rising from when he was just Filthy Frank, Papa Franku on YouTube many years ago. And he would come out with little funny culinary videos and songs,
We don't
and
talk about those.
yeah, I know, we don't. But it's really the truth. And I would show some people, oh yeah, check out this guy. He's so crazy and he's so funny. And then I'll be like, oh, you got to listen to this song. And they're like, wow, this is really funny and really interesting, but it's made really well. I'm like, yeah, but would you believe that it's also Joji from 60 years ago, and everybody's like, what? No way. I'm like, yeah, but the true fans, maybe I'm going to lead us to say it, but true fans, they enjoy the Filthy Frank and they also enjoy Joji. That's not one or the other, I believe.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember this. I mean, you probably know this, but Joji's original channel name was Disaster Music.
Yes, actually, I do.
Which was, I suppose, I thought it was supposed to be like a music thing. And it kind of evolved into a whole genre of its own.
Yeah, completely. So, I mean, in so many different ways, but I think it really came down to some of the different time, what was popular at the moment. I can't imagine that Joji was making, a lot of money off of, silly videos and silly songs, but really found a huge following with a little bit more serious and maybe tranquil tones to really come into that rising, really finding out what he originally wanted to do now recently in the last year or two.
Yeah, looking at his discography, he's been making music since 2014. I mean, obviously they weren't serious to stay on, like the Paint Season album. That's a lot of memes right there. That's just the whole meme album.
Completely so. However, given a chance to actually listen to, and not to, dissect it, but when you really do break it down and you think about how the song was created and how the music was really put together and orchestrated, it's done really well. Regardless of the silly and benign lyrics, when you break down to the pure audio quality, to the pure instrumentals of every single song, it was put together very delicately and with a lot of serious intent. And it almost kind of brings me to think that it was kind of let me say some silly stuff, but to prove a point that I can make music just to get a label or to get a following with like 88 Uprising, you know?
Yeah, 88 Rising.
Yes, sorry.
Very fine. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting journey. I say that word a lot, but it really is. Like, it's just a unique journey of what George Miller has gone on.
Oh yeah, completely so. And even if you follow some of his side projects on YouTube, you can see and you can find actual small like little vlogs about him going through a lot of his struggles. As a matter of fact, and he utilized some of his filthy Frank stuff to kind of be a form of art to be silly and release so many of these different pensive things. He actually, if I remember correctly, he had a disease that was really kind of tearing his life up in 2012, and if I'm not mistaken, he was still fighting and struggling with that up until a couple years ago.
Yeah,
But
he suffers from a seizure disorder.
right, and so it really kind of exploits. Okay, well, art is art no matter how you look at it, because you can't judge Joji for Pink Guy, with Pink Season or Pink Omega or whatever the hell you want to call it. And so it comes down to, I feel like it was like when you're a young kid and you're told no because you can't get candy, you throw a temper tantrum, and you're like just going all out, but then you're 25 years old, and you ask a girl and she says no, you just kind of get sad.
You can't,
But
can't really cry in person about that.
yeah, and so I
Could,
think it's
but
very much still like
yeah.
that. I mean, and it could be just a long stretch to say that, but at the same time, I mean, again, we go from one style of music to a completely different, where we're looking at a lot of really what's popular nowadays is the lo-fi hip hop, and maybe for like a better term, but very depressing, sad music, the sad boy hours
That's
kind of
definitely
music.
that's definitely been on the rise in the past few years, especially due to SoundCloud.
Oh, sure. But I think it's something that people can relate to without having to talk about it. It makes them feel welcomed. And I think Joji really felt that, had the opportunity to express that, and so many people have latched onto that. And it's just such another level of music. I feel like it's a lot of relation. You know.
Yeah, yeah, I got you on that. It's I mean, I was first introduced to Joji, or George Miller, as his official real name is,
Right.
through his pink guy antics. Running through the street, crawling in restaurants.
Right. Salamander Man.
Yeah, like
Safari Man, Pink Guy. Um,
all the
there's so
stereotype
many.
videos.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
You know,
that's. I'm pretty sure my brother showed me him, and I was like, "This guy's pretty funny," in a different way. And now
yeah,
you look at him and Run, his newest single, came out last month, and it's amazing. It's such a good song, and he even performed earlier this month on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. I think that was might have been his first performance on TV. I think it was.
yeah, yeah.
And he's calm, collected, just doing his thing, and it's just so funny to see, like, someone that we kind of grew up with in a way. You
Yeah,
know?
especially in high school. Let's be honest. We grew up with that edgy teen humor where it's just like this so obscure and insane, and yet we absolutely loved it. And then it kind of creeps into some of the Joji stuff. You can actually go into one of his songs as Pink Guy, and the ending of it, he's saying in a silly voice, he's like mocking, everybody who was following him. and following his early Joji stuff, and he goes, "Oh, we want Joji music, we want real music," and he goes, "Well, fuck you. If I can't make, why can't I not make a funny culinary video, but also do some serious music? Like I'm gonna do me, And this was before even the Pink Season album came out, And so he really has been cultivating the Joji sound for a lot more years than I think a lot of people give him credit for. Because when people think of Joji, they think of Slow Dancing in the Dark. They think of
I don't
just
want
so
to waste my
many.
time.
Yes, seriously. Yeah, right. They think of Test Drive. All these different, really one of my favorites, which came out, I think, in late 2017, Demons. That I think was one of his most popular songs that he could have came out with and orchestrated together in a fashion out of after Pink Guy, after Filthy Frank, because you look at a lot of different artists, and let's talk about actors for a quick second. There are a lot of actors who they do these teenage movies, and then we don't see anything about them for 5 years almost, and then they come out and they're doing some serious roles. And there was and it's but Joji, he never did that. George Miller did not do that. He kind of really just went with the flow, and nobody really talks about his early stuff, which I think is good, because at the same time, when you think about the people who listen to Joji who've never heard of his earlier stuff or even productions of anything,
You mean
I think they're what was that?
You mean as Filthy Frank?
Yes.
Okay.
I think a lot of people probably would have looked at his music in a different light as we kind of grew up with him, because he's really not much older than you and I.
He's 27, I believe.
Yeah, he's really. I mean, he's not much older than me.
Yeah.
As far as anything's really concerned. So I grew up with him, but a lot of people, they can't stand Filthy Frank, but they absolutely adore Joji. And so, as far as his music and as far as perfect timing, I think it really was put together at an amazing time, and everything just kind of fell through, just one good thing after another, despite of what he goes through in his personal life that I think a lot of people forget about.
Yeah, and he even made a book. I don't know if you remember. He made a book.
Are you talking about Francis of the Filth?
Yeah, my brother has that book.
I bought the book the day it came out.
But looking at some of his Wikipedia pages, I'm not really familiar with stuff recently of Filthy Frank and Joji, but it does seem as if he did leave YouTube for his health.
Oh yeah.
So honestly, I don't. Who knows if that, like, assuming he didn't have this unfortunate issue, but like, who knows if what he would have done at this point, like, because he stopped about 2 years ago. It seemed almost 2 or 3 years ago from doing 50
about 3
Frank.
years ago now.
And it's like, was this always the intention? I don't think we'll ever know, because
it's hard to say. It really, really is. Because he had so many different friends on, through the YouTube community that still sit on the YouTube community and a little bit on Twitch. H3H3 Productions is one of them, Ethan and Hila. They were very close. And I mean, if you go back to those videos, they make cameos in each other's videos.
iDubbbz too.
Yeah, iDubbbz as well. JonTron here and there, and so it's just so many. The community is so tight in the YouTube, so it's kind of amazing that he had just taken this huge step away from it, because it's like working for a company, and then you just switch careers on a whim, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but this time it really did. And so there's just so many different aspects to the creating of Joji.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, I find this, I don't want to say interesting. I said interesting too many times. I've always thought of the Filthy Frank character as someone who could say whatever he wanted and just get away with it. And on YouTube, because he was very explicit. He was very. There's the whole idea of being politically correct, in recent years, and he was far from that.
Far from, yes.
He said word. I mean, there's obviously words that people shouldn't say to each other. That that at least is always evolving, but he said everything.
He said it all. It's part of that shock humor that he was definitely all about.
And I think it's but I think it's cool that iDubbbz is kind of the only one really doing that now.
Right. I mean
I'm not too knowledgeable, but
no, I mean, as far as iDubbbz, I know a little bit about some of the funny. I know how to quote his memes,
Yeah.
like I have osteoporosis kind of type of deal. But really, when Filthy Frank turned and transformed into Joji full time, iDubbbz and a lot of other supporting and friendly productions on YouTube really got really dry. And a lot of people really struggled to make content without, I would have to say, the template of what Filthy Frank did. And even as Joji now, there are so many different artists who strive to be like Joji, especially in the lo-fi hip hop fandom, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people. Like, there's a lo-fi hip hop radio show that I'm listening to in the background right now, and there are 28,000 people listening and watching right now to that, and that's such a huge thing. But the point of me saying that is Joji's music has those same influences, but he puts in such a surreal and mental stability to those kind of beats where it's relaxing but has such a deep motive that it's just a astronomical ideology that creates a different aspect of what and how we listen to music, because there's not a lot of artists that we listen to on the radio that talks about these things, that talks about being sad. Sure, there's different artists like all the single ladies, all the single, you know what I mean? Like, okay, we get it, like you guys are single and you're ladies, but Joji really takes it to another level where he talks about being depressed, and he does it so well. Some of his first couple of songs from, I want to say, one of his In Tongues EP. Yeah. There is a specific song on there that I actually absolutely love, and let's see, I don't want to say the wrong song. I mean, because I already talked about Demons, but Will He and World Star Money, the interlude, just both those songs are just so in deep, and that EP perfectly encapsulated what Joji planned on doing with his music career.
It was a taste.
Yes, In Tongues, quite literally.
I will say this. I do think, like you said, Joji's ability to tap into his inner thoughts and inner struggles is his upbringing in YouTube as a filmmaker, as a person who makes videos, because his videos are very good at showing how he feels also.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I Soul Dancing in the Dark is a great video. Run is a really good video. I think you should all see Run. And his videos are starting to tell a narrative too, like an overarching narrative.
And I think that's something that he's just always been good at. If you really tap into the Filthy Frank series and you read Francis of the Filth, the entire book that he created, published, and put together and all, he's a very chronological driven artist.
Yeah.
That really doesn't surprise me to hear about that, as far as everything that goes on. to say on the sad terms, I only see things on Joji that come up on on the bigger portions of everything. Just because there's been so much new music that has been coming out, especially in the underground side of things, which is where I derived a lot of my music from. It does get a little filtered out, and I think that's part of the reason why we'll probably never really hear Joji on the radio. And I don't think that's what everybody wants to necessarily listen to either. They want to listen to that when they're in their feelings, but when they're on their way to the club, kind of type of deal, they're not going to pop in, pills in his, in tongues EP. They're going to want to have a good time.
I do think what you said about being on the radio, I don't think that's gonna last for too much longer. I think with the successive run and its appeal, I think it may be on the radio, or his next song will be on the radio relatively soon, if it's still going at this sound that he's working on, because it's going huge on YouTube. And I mean, I've always thought ever since Spotify came out, and Apple Music came out, that radio would be less prominent. Because I mean, my overall thought on the radio is, and same thing with Sirius XM, Pandora, and normal FM stations, is like, why would I want to listen to what someone else is listening to? Like, why can't I listen to what I want to listen to? You know what I mean? And when I want to, I don't want to have to wait through commercials on just to listen to a song that's already going to be censored, and it's hard. I'm like, well, I just go on Spotify and listen to whatever I want when I want.
Right.
But with the rise of him on YouTube as a musician, and like I said, he was on Jimmy Fallon, and that they don't put anybody on Jimmy Fallon.
No, not at all. There's a very few artists that I know that have gone on there recently in the last couple of years that also you would have never thought that's their first TV, their first national live, television broadcasting was on Jimmy Fallon. That's why I have a lot of respect for him. And it's amazing that he even included Joji, and a few other artists, but it's such a dramatic increase, because I think it's really going to start a lot of these, the YouTube artists, the SoundCloud artists that are really big are really going to start changing the way that we listen to music, because I think a lot of people are becoming more conscious about different styles of music. They're realizing that the club rap of 2003 is just not where we want to be.
Yeah. And if you want to think about it this way, too, honestly, the older generation is not the one listening to music. What I'm trying to get at is that the older generations, probably around 50 and above, they have their favorites. They have their classics. They're not open to new music. Yeah, they have, like, I listen, like, for example, I love Frank Sinatra, but some older people are like, I listen to Frank Sinatra and only Frank Sinatra. And I'm like, yeah, he died a long time ago, and his music is dated. And that's all I listen to.
Right, and don't get me wrong, it's a classic, but it's funny because you say that, because we have a dishwasher where I work. I work in a restaurant, and he's 40 years old, and he was listening to jazz, and like I said, that's cool, but have you listened to at all any kind of like lo-fi hip hop at all? It's like, what the hell is that? I don't know what that means. I'm like, it's a lot of electronic, but they utilize a lot of jazz influences, a lot of soul influences and samples, etc. Yet it's something that they took that was dated and kind of brought it into the today with a little bit more of a today and future sound that is actually wildly successful. But unfortunately, a lot of the ignorance that comes down to that is, well, they're just going to listen to their classics. Hey, I get it. I love the Rolling Stones just as much as the next guy, as long as the next guy wasn't born in the 70s or 60s.
also on top of that, like I said, the older generation does not use Spotify, does not use Apple Music, does not use SoundCloud, not using YouTube for the same ways we would use them as our ages. And it's basically down to who's gonna pay these people for the music. Is it gonna be 85-year-old Susan who listens to Frank Sinatra 24/7, or is it gonna be Bill, who's 20 years old, has a Spotify account, listens to everything?
Everything. And that really comes down to what we look at movies and what we look at, television shows and what we look at with books and everything. It's really our generation, this millennial generation and even Gen Z on the older side of things, they really are starting to become so much more open-minded than anybody in the last couple of generations, last couple of decades. You don't find a lot of people who say, yeah, I listen to everything. And you're like, everything? Everything. I love me some, Jop or a Cowboy on the satanic death metal side, but I also really enjoy, De La Soul on the R&B and rap side of things. But I really enjoy Britney Spears on the pop side of things. You know what I mean? Like you start to hear that more often, with the exclusion that country. Either you love country or you hate country, for the most part, and I find a lot of people who, when they listen to music, they say, and I say it myself, I listen to pretty much everything but country.
Yep,
and that's a whole nother story, I think, for another time, as far as when we're talking about that, because we could talk about that for a really long time. And not that I would want to say that I disprove country as a valid music source or a valid listening to, pastime. But at the same time, it's just not for me in the basics of things. But my point being is, a lot of these older generations, when we're talking about 50, 60, 70-year-old people, which really 70 sounds old, but it's really not. My grandfather, he's 72, he's still working. He's still a working man, So it's not like he is, this feeble old man that's requited to new ideas and new aspects. But damn, if he's not going to listen to the same music that that him and his friends grew up with, and they're still going to keep listening to that music no matter what. Where nowadays a lot of people are really open to anything that just sounds good. If the beat is there, the lyrics are there, the hook is there, the chorus is there.
The appeal
so many different
peers is also important too.
Yeah, exactly. When Joji first came out, to bring that back, a lot of people were weary about it, because some people are like, okay, well, this guy seems he's just like really depressed and really sad all the time. But I feel like the community that supported Filthy Frank to Joji also was like, no, give it a listen. We promise it's good. And they're like, how can you tell? I said, we promise it's good.
Just give it a chance.
George. Yes. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that as music progresses, as far as genres and evolution.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually, I don't know how to phrase this necessarily, but I think George Miller is one of the biggest and most well-known YouTube success stories. Started off as an obscure comic.
Mm-hmm.
Then now he has a book. He has he has multiple albums. He has multiple characters. He has a loyal fan base of, I think, over 13 million subscribers before he stopped. And now he's on TV.
Right. TV. Like, here we are. This is what we do.
And that was, for being a first appearance on TV, I mean, once this whole, virus stuff, whereas now people are back to watching nightly shows like Jimmy Fallon and all that, I think there's going to be more appearances from him, especially with this album, if it comes out anytime soon this year.
Right, and I would have to agree to that. I mean, as soon as everything kind of calms down, I think the steamroller of Joji is really just going to continue to blow up and only going to get more popular. And I can honestly say that in 2030, he's still going to have music that's going to be coming out, and people are going to be like, "Oh, I only like Joji's old stuff," and you're like, "Oh, well, that's what everybody says about every artist, every band, every musician. However, I think that's going to be very plausible, and I think the people who watched him grew with us on the internet to just the listening ear. It's going to be quite the journey, and I can expect a lot from Joji, but will not ever be disappointed if he ever goes in hiatus, kind of type of deal either.
And I mean, he's been doing this since. I mean, he's only been doing this since like what 2014, I think.
As far as official releases, Joji, like saying that I'm Joji and this
I
is my
mean, Filthy
music. I
Frank
think
in
it's
general. Oh, he's been
Filthy
doing
Frank.
it. Oh, he's been doing this for way longer. 2006.
Yeah,
It says.
2006.
Okay, so we
Yeah,
had
that's when
14 years with this guy.
Oh yeah,
And
there's so much.
just recently has he transitioned into a whole nother character.
Oh yeah,
And if he was doing
well,
yeah, and if he was doing the whole Filthy Frank Pink guy thing for up until then, that was a long time for that. And
oh yeah,
it's gonna be cool to see what he does as a whole as Joji moving forward. But I think we talked about Joji for enough. We got about 35 minutes of Joji talk so far. But I'm looking forward to his stuff, and I know you are. And
yeah.
we will see. And he's also breaking records of being an Asian-born artist, topping charts.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
he was born in Osaka, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Japan.
Yeah, Osaka, Japan. God, I'm good at this. But I mean, I guess to make a transition, talking about underground artists and talking about rappers, I kind of talked a little bit about that. I mean, there's plenty of those, you talked about Joji being on Jimmy Fallon, and I really want to talk about Aesop Rock. Not to be confused with Aesop Rocky, something I always have to say.
Spelled differently, different person.
Yeah, completely. Aesop Rock has been rapping since about 1996. Oh yeah, he's been in this game. He has a song called "Klutz" is a single, and he literally has a line in there that goes, "I've been rapping longer than you've been interested." And I think that's a direct stab at a lot of these younger 18-year-old artists that talk about just doing drugs and doing hooligan ass stuff. Because I mean, he's been doing this for 23, 24 years, working his way up. And, he was actually on Jimmy Fallon's show as a supergroup with Rob Sonic called Hail Mary Mallon. And they had 2 albums together. Really fun album, a lot of energy. And they both performed one of Aesop's songs on that show, and it was his first live national televised show. But he's been such a huge artist. I've seen him twice now, met him both times. Very humbling artist, but every time I go, it's a sold out show. Every venue it's nuts to butts, busy, filled up, no matter what. So for him to get like a live showing on Jimmy Fallon's show, just as Joji did, it was a lot of exciting news for me, and to watch him and to see him perform. It wasn't like System of a Down, back in 2001 or 3, where they did their first national show, Spiders. And Serge Tankian in the middle of the song goes, "Wake up, America, wake up!" There wasn't a hidden factor behind it. But Aesop, he's a lyricist before he is anything else. He's a great producer, but he's wordy. He literally, the vocabulary list that Anthony brought up earlier, in the very beginning, the Putting That Cool Project's vocabulary index.
Yeah.
which was updated January 21st, 2019. So it's a little old, but as far as information, it's not like it's old. The original publishing of this chart was in 2014, which is where I get a lot of my information from. But we talk about the unique words used. And I know that this artist or this chart does not count the words, obviously, the, and, I,
Yeah,
etc. Not
unique
a lot of
words
the simple
only.
words. Yep. And Aesop Rock is at the lead of the chart at 7,879 unique words used. Very intelligent, and it's not just word vomit either. It's put together so intelligently. It really does paint an entire novella inside of your brain. Every song you listen to, doesn't matter what project he's done, if it's by himself or if it's with other artists. This guy has been around for a long time. He's got some unlikely truces with a lot of different artists and a lot of different rappers that not a lot of people would think about.
Yeah, and to put into perspective, when this list came out in 2019, Eminem did make 2 more albums since then. Kamikaze was last year, wasn't it? And then
I believe so.
Music to Be Murdered By was this year. And we saw that Eminem was around the middle part, actually.
Yeah, in the overall scale,
Eminem is
like
between
that's set in the middle.
4,100 and 4,500 unique words, whereas Mr. Rock over here is 3,000 more unique words than Eminem. And Eminem has always been known as a wordsmith. Someone who's using words.
You read that dictionary 2 times over.
Yeah, and here's just one guy. I mean, I think Aesop Rock. I mean, they've been around almost the same amount of time. That's why I brought up Eminem, because they're both from the '90s.
Right.
And Eminem, obviously the more famous of the two by far.
Sure.
But Aesop Rock, he's killing it in this vocabulary game. I mean, put into more perspective, we have let's see, Lil Wayne, who was considered to be one of the best rappers of all time. He's only at 3,200 at 3,650. And I mean, this isn't adding his newest album, but I'm pretty sure there's not going to be much new stuff coming from there. many new words.
Right.
Yeah, even Drake is in that same category as Lil Wayne in amount of words, and these are, people with big discographies. But
a lot of following,
and they're using the same word. Like, I've listened to Aesop Rock, but I'm not as big as a fan as you. Just I guess time, probably my biggest fault. But,
sure. Yeah. I mean, I follow him on Instagram. I follow him on Facebook. Every time he comes to Colorado or any surrounding state, like, I'm always there all the time, trying to meet him, trying to talk to him. And he's a humbling artist. He really, really is intelligent, humble. He's nice. I mean, he's a cool guy, and he's very tall. Which I'm not, I guess, but. Really, the intelligence of Aesop Rock really kind of breaks down to one of his I guess more popular songs, "None Shall Pass," which is on his "None Shall Pass" album that came out in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. That whole song, actually, you can find. What is it? There's a individual on YouTube who talked about. I'm trying to think of his name, but who talked about the "None Shall Pass" song and broke it down. It took him like 12 minutes to kind of break down the song and to kind of talk about how Aesop Rock raps. There's a lot of different ways in how he breaks it down. I mean, to the point where there's rumors that he figured out that if you have a single chorus inside of your song, it's going to increase the popularity of your song by 14.9% every single time you have a chorus or hook. And he's the one who figured this out. He's the one who's like, yeah, okay, I understand this. Uh, so when it came down to creating a song with No Chill Pass, which I just looked it up and I was trying to make sure that I fact checked myself, and actually it came out in 2007, so a couple years off. But he's come out with so much different material and so much different kind of music. The re-listening properties that this guy has is onto another level, because you listen to a song once, and other than the chorus here and there, he does not have repeating lines, he does not have repeating verses or bars. Everything is different, and he's not a cat in the hat laid on the mat and he was very fat kind of rapper. He actually breaks down to sometimes where his rhymes are really more into the syllabus side of things, or it's going to follow a case of A B C A B C A, where not every line or every other line is going to be what rhymes. So when he raps, it's not something that is so simple to where you can really just follow along and listen to, just one listen through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do want to add, looking at this chart again, reading some of the notes, that this is only the artist's first 3,500 words, or 35,000 words, lyrics. I mean, that are not
Really?
that are unique. So, I don't know how many different albums Aesop Rock. You probably know that answer. How many albums? He probably has a lot of albums, right?
So Aesop has okay, he has a lot of albums, he has a lot of EPs, but he also has a lot of super groups that he was a part of. So the Impossible came out in 2006, None Shall Pass in 7, Skeleton on 2012, Labor Days, which was 2001, Float, which he did a lot of that with Atmosphere, Music for Earthworms. He as well has done Appleseed, which isn't something that you can find just willy nilly. You have to actually really look deep on that Appleseed, because he never released that album on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on some really underground websites. But again, that was just a very underground EP. So if you want to, talk about, and then let's see, so that's 7 albums. That's at least 5, 6. Well, if you want to say 8 EPs, just as far as Aesop by himself. And then we can talk about, he did Hail Mary Mallon for 2 albums. You know what I mean? He also worked with Tobacco for another album. He did that last year. If you want to talk about the entire soundtrack that he did for an indie film called Bushwick, you know what I mean? So really, depending on how you want to look at it, this guy just has so many different, albums, so many different kind of music projects that it's just ridiculous. From again, we talked about Slug, Atmosphere, MF Doom. A lot of people know MF Doom a lot. He's done stuff with him. Evidence is a really big one. Most Def, very popular. Most Def's done stuff with the Gorillaz as well. Damon Albarn, their frontman.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that. Besides, this is the first 35,000 words, so this list is obviously not modernized, I would say, because they're basing Aesop Rock in the 2000s as his prime, as his most words gathered, I would say. So that's 20 years ago, basically.
Well,
like.
Well, and if you look at it, if you think about it, if you want to talk about the growth of Aesop has really showed true growth as an artist, as a musician, as a rapper, really as an MC in general. You listen to a lot of his older stuff in 1999 to 2001. It's very, not necessarily aggressive, but it's very straightforward. It's very honest. You talk about his Appleseed EP. There's a song called 1,000 Deaths. And literally, one of the lyrics goes, "Have you ever died 1,000 deaths? I have." And you're like, oh, geez, okay. And then his 2001 Labor Days album, talking about the general working population of America works from 9 to 5, and then from 5 to 9, they're paying attention to what they need to be doing for tomorrow's 9 to 5, and so it's very, very aggressive. But then you go into None Shall Pass, and we get a little bit more political, and we get a little bit more personable. We get a little bit more, so many different things. And that's only a couple of years. And we're not talking about his bazooka tooth. We're not talking about his flow. We're not talking about music for earthworms. We're talking about some of his more bigger projects he's worked on. The guy has really evolved in the best way possible, where you can listen to The Impossible Kid, that came out in 2016, and then listen to Music for Earthworms, which was one of his first EPs in 1997, and say, you know what? This is the same guy, but man, if he hasn't changed
He's
in every.
adapted and learned.
Oh, completely so. I remember when The Impossible Kid came out, and I gave it its first playthrough. Its first playthrough that you could only listen to was he did it himself. It was straight through on YouTube, and you can still find it. But it was almost like a puppets remake of The Shining. So very funny, very interesting. And don't really know, nobody really knows what the tribe of making a mock copy of The Shining over the song. But I remember listening to the song for the very first time and thinking to myself, man, Aesop, he's put in more relevant beats, more of the not necessarily hip hop kind of sound, but it's very much so relevant to what music is in its surrounding uh, motives without changing his sound at all. They're a little bit more of pulling away from the drum kit sound samples to something a little bit more electronic sound sample, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do actually want. I don't know if this exists, but I'll have to do some research. But I do want to see if there is an updated list of vocabulary of all time. Not just the first 35,000 words. Just I still think he'll probably be at the top of the list.
I would unfortunately have to agree, not just because I'm biased towards him, but when I listen to him and I listen to a lot of other artists and even other similar artists that rap with and for rhyme sayers, which is the where he comes out of as far as production is concerned.
Yeah.
He still kind of outbeats everybody. And there's even a lot of people in the community, in the underground rap community, that say, oh, well, Aesop Rock, he's just word vomit. He's just this. And all he does is just come up with big words and he makes them sound smart. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, that's what he does, and he does it very well. And sorry that you gotta think about what you're listening to. It's like listening to Tool. You can't just slap in some Tool and go crazy. No, you got to listen to that. You got to enjoy it. And Aesop is very much so music that you sit down, you enjoy, and you feel what he has to say, as opposed to listen to what he has to say, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But if they do this modern, like a full comprehensive list, I don't know what your list, like your top three would be. I think mine. I don't know about the order yet, but I think mine would probably be Aesop Rock, because he's already number one on the first 35,000 words. He's probably gonna be probably the top three at least. MF Doom, maybe, because okay. he has a lot of projects, and he's very diverse in his vocabulary. Because he is number, like, he's right up there with Wu-Tang Clan as a clan.
Like, yeah. He's not that far. He's about 1,500 words behind Aesop as far as anything. But MF Doom, he's a lot of fun. He's an Atlanta rapper. So right there with like Killer Mike and LP, Run the Jewels, if you've ever heard of them.
Yep.
Done a lot of stuff with and for and around Adult Swim, because everything's out of Atlanta, so I know that they're pretty close as far as friends are really concerned. The community is crazy like that. But MF Doom, he's a lot of fun. I really enjoy what he has to say, but also at the same time, I really enjoy some of his more kookier music as well.
Yeah, I do think Eminem might be on the top three of vocabulary, because like I said, this list is only counting him from the 2000s. So like I said, that's many more years of albums that have come out. But
Right. Well, you have to also look at the fact that this vocabulary chart is a sample of the population. So statistically, I would have to say it's pretty spot on. Not just in my favor of how many intelligent underground rappers are in here, including like Brother Ali, Delta Funky Homo Sapiens, Sage Francis, etc. It's one of those type of deals where it's still a sample of the population, and so it is reliable data to look at. Because you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can make sure that the dog doesn't piss in the house too. And I think that's what a lot of new music kind of is nowadays, especially rappers that have been rapping for 20, almost 30 years. De La Soul's been rapping since the late 80s, all three of them. And, but when you listen to some of their more recent stuff from a couple years ago, it's still De La Soul. They're not gonna get into the club rap,
they already have their sound.
Exactly. And that's, and not to, talk down on Eminem. I think he's a very intelligent rapper. He's not for me. However, I can say that my biggest issue was when he went to club rap, in the early, probably like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when he went into the club rap, and it really kind of hurt what I had him going for, if that makes sense.
What would you consider Eminem's club rap songs? Out of curiosity.
A lot of different things, like with what I want to say, Beyonce. Is that the
Beyonce wasn't a he did songs with Rihanna.
Rihanna, that's who it is. I don't listen to a lot of that music, but so similar music to that in that era, where he really went into we're going to listen to something I could just hear by 50 Cent or 2 Chainz, and that sound probably 10 years ago is kind of where he went towards, as far as creating music, not to create music and not to exploit a true motive or a feeling. He kind of came into, you're going into what everybody else is doing. You're listening. So you're literally doing songs with 50 Cent and Akon. Not really my thing,
Well, that would be more towards the 2000s, not 2010.
I mean, I'd say so, but that's 2010 is when he started breaking free from it again. But
I think 2010 would be Eminem at his poppiest. Because you have Won't Bat Down, that was a Call of Duty song. You have Not Afraid, which was everywhere at the time. Remember that?
Yeah, I certainly do.
Spacebound. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. And
no, I don't think so.
Love the Way You Lie with Rihanna, the one you're talking about. Those are all on the radio.
Yeah, all on the radio.
And then, that was
Eminem's Encore album probably was one of my favorites from him, quite honestly, because I really felt like it encapsulated every single portion that he is as a rapper. He's intelligent. He's wordy. He can get poppy. He can move around. He can change the flow. He can change the direction of every song, while still being true to himself, as far as being what an artist is, or what a musician is in their own self. And when Eminem took a step away from that, and you're right, closer into 2000s, finishing up in the 2010s, I felt like he just really stepped away from that, just so that financially it was probably the smart thing to do, the right thing to do. However, just as Rage Against the Machine once said that they were never going to sell out, but then they sold out, and went to a big name record label, and I feel like Eminem did that, but Eminem kind of hurt himself to artists, or I guess listeners like myself, who enjoy the underground. When he was first coming out with Dr. Dre, like, this is what we're doing. I got this new white guy. He's going to do some amazing things. And bam, he was doing amazing things, in the 90s, in, late 90s kind of type frame. I mean, there was so much soul in that music that you could hear it, you could feel it. And that's when I listen to rap, especially rap, because rhythm poetry, rhyming and poetry, to me, you have to have emotion to it, and that's why I have an issue with a lot of mainstream music, because it's no better than country, man. It's about the same five things. Country is about God, beer, love, and tractors and whatnot. Rap is, mainstream rap is about bitches, bling, and drugs and etc. And you're just like, what? I can't relate to that. I work a normal person
I work in
job.
a kitchen.
I work, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a server now. I'm a bartender now, but at the same time, like I go in at 3:30 and until 11. You know what I'm not doing? Popping Xanax, so I can't relate to that. I'm gonna have a glass of whiskey at the end of my night. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna take a shower. I'm gonna go to sleep. What I mean? That's what I can relate to. I can relate to paying my bills.
So you relate to a common man like Aesop Rock.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of what he raps about. He raps about his personal struggles. The man's only 42, 43 years old, but at the same time, he's like, everybody just works, and it is horrible and it sucks, but this is just what we've done to ourselves. And even when he talks about his politics, it's hard to tell, like, what side is he on or what side is he not on. But he really sets it up to where it makes the listener think. And I like to think when I listen to music. I enjoy music, but I like to also feel and hear and want to think. I want to put something together in my head, or I want to be able to truly relate. And I just don't know how many people can actually relate to just drinking your face off, doing a bunch of cocaine, and going out all the time. I don't know who has the income to do that. I get paid pretty good money, but not that kind of money. So I either need to get those kind of jobs, or we need to start making music that's a little bit more realistic, I think.
Yeah, in reference to I was talking about earlier, but I did a recorded with my friend Taylor yesterday, who's a SoundCloud, underground SoundCloud musician, and even what he's saying, what you're saying now, is very relatable to him, because you're both working people, you both have full-time jobs, and you both have feelings, and you want to be able to relate to stuff that you just not every musician is out there to make you relatable. They might want to relate to them. Like, I don't think, like, looking at this list of the chart, there are some people who are just not relatable. Like Tyga, Tyga?
Yes, unfortunately.
Tyga's always been like you said, a club type of sound. Like, he's always talking about women, money, drugs, stuff like that. Whereas, like, then you have people like
Sage Franch's Brother Ali. Brother Ali, he's an illegally blind albino Muslim rapper. He's got a song, and literally goes, he's like, man, I got so many red eviction notices, it's starting to look like Valentine's Day up in here. You're like, oh man, like I mean, we have all gone through some rough patches, and I can joke around, I can relate to that, but I go to Insane Clown Posse, which is also on this list, and I'm like, I can't relate to killing people or wanting to kill people. I mean, I gotten pretty mad at people, but
yeah, that's the problem with horrorcore rap. Is that,
yeah,
like, I'm gonna end this podcast here for over an hour actually already. Doesn't feel like it, but we are. But yeah, goes by fast. But there are some rappers that I like. Brother Lynch, Brother Lynch?
Yes.
I like him. I'm not a cannibal.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, and that's fair, and that's fair.
I mean, he's not a cannibal either. Let's be real here. But he paints you a picture, and it's just like, I'll listen to the song, but I don't see the message. I'm not, I'm not like, or even Rick Ross. Rick Ross is someone who's, I have his book. I haven't read it yet, but I have his book. Always been a fan of the guy. But at the end of the day, we don't have the same lifestyle. You're so far disconnected. It's interesting.
It really is, and I really think I actually got into this argument a couple of times about say, hey, when you're comparing underground and you're comparing to mainstream or just popular radio artists in general, you're comparing fruit, but you're still comparing oranges to apples. And at the end of the day, listen to what makes you happy. Because I know for myself, I'm gonna listen to Common Market. I'm gonna listen to Blue Scholars. I'm gonna listen to Brother Ali, Sage Francis, Atmosphere, Evidence. MF Doom. So many of these Delapunky and Mistake great hieroglyphics. Always at Aesop Rock. I'm gonna listen to those guys because I can relate to them. If anybody can relate to popping Xanax or getting really drunk all the time, or maybe you're slinging cock, I don't know. Everybody's. But it's one of those type of deals where music is music no matter how you look at it.
Man, it's a form of expression. It's at the end of the day.
But at the end of the day, I tend to listen to the more intelligent rappers. So yeah, I'm gonna lean towards that 6,000 unique word artists. Where almost everybody that I just named off is really in there. De La Soul's even up here. But I'm also gonna respect some of the small time artists. Or who else? I off the top of my head, Tyler the Creator. And he's pretty mainstream, but you're not listening to him on the radio much anymore.
No, but he is getting very, very popular.
Yes.
Compared to what he was always been popular with the younger generations, with Later Squad and
Later Squad.
But now, and he's doing whatever he wants to do. He's getting popular for being himself.
Yeah, exactly, and I can almost relate to that more than I can relate to Machine Gun Kelly.
No one relates to Machine Gun Kelly.
No.
He does have that one song that came out a few months ago, and it's really sad. It's about I think it's about losing your friends to death and all that. But
right.
Yeah. But honestly, I think we've gone on for over an hour, almost an hour and 10 minutes now.
Oh yeah, good deal. I would love to, come back on and, talk some more about, just this list, talk about some more different artists, even talk about some Biggie Smalls and Tupac and et cetera, and kind of how rap evolved from there.
Yeah, it's always fun talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for having me on. I don't know what other words you need to say, but,
is there a place people can find you to follow you, or are you keeping that to yourself?
Really just kind of keeping to myself. I stay underground just as much as most of the artists that I to, man.
All right. Well, for those who listen this far, congratulations. I always say that it's not an easy feat.
No.
But especially after an hour. But if you enjoyed Justin, leave a comment. Say we want more Justin. I can definitely arrange that. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already to my channel. Helps out. Like the videos. Just in this time of staying inside for the undisclosed future. As long as I can do this show, just without any interruptions. Just with schools being shut down for now, and every place is shutting down. I have time to do this now, and it's cool to have people like Dan, Taylor, Justin. These are good friends of mine to do this little show with. So yeah, leave a comment what you want to hear. If you want to hear Justin do anything else, talk about anything else, we can definitely set that up. But thank you for listening. Have a nice day, and more than ever, stay healthy. All right, guys. I'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.